Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Mike Muthersbaugh. Again, I'm a wildlife biologist focused on upland game birds out of the central office, Albany office in New York. And I'm just going to talk about the wild turkey in New York, what we do for some monitoring of the population, talk about harvest data and how we get it, productivity trends of wild turkey in New York, future directions, just touch on spring season considerations and that spring turkey hunter survey, satisfaction survey that we sent out earlier this year that Josh mentioned back in the beginning of the talk. Again, if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. You can just send it to everyone in the Q&A. Just type it out there, and I will try to make up some ground because we're running a little behind. So I don't want to keep you here all evening, but so I'll try to talk quickly, but feel free to ask questions if you need clarification. So the DEC collects two main data types for turkey. We have harvest data, importantly, which I'll get into first, and then I'll touch on summer survey productivity. So how we get that. So turkey harvest estimation, we calculate the harvest of turkeys each season, so fall and spring season. After each season, we calculate that using postseason surveys. So from these surveys, we get hunting effort and take per unit effort, importantly. Historically, we used to send these surveys out by mail. It was just a turkey card survey. Some of you on this might have gotten one of those postcards up until a few years ago. And then we transitioned completely over to an online or email survey. And so like I said, we're still calculating the same things from that postseason survey. Eventually, we get our estimated harvest. We get that by calculating hunting effort based on the survey responses, and eventually take per unit effort. So how many turkeys are taken per hour hunted, for example, or per 100 hunter days is what we'll commonly use. So like I said, those are right now, those are post-season email campaigns, and that's how we distribute those. We're sending it to 50,000 email turkey tag holders. Over 40,000 of those end up being delivered and not bouncing. So far, we've gotten about 10,000 returns each time we send it for about a 20% response rate, a little over that, which is pretty good for email surveys. So if you get those, keep filling them out, whether you hunted or not. And then if you hunted and you still didn't take a bird and you just got unlucky that season, that's still really great data that we can definitely use, and we need you to participate in that, because the more survey respondents we have, the tighter we can go on our spatial scale in terms of analysis, and the more data we have on turkeys, and the better we're able to monitor the population and figure out what's going on, keep a pulse on that population. All right, so here is the harvest trend from 1998 through 2025. So that's just the spring season estimated harvest from 1998 through 2025. You can see that there was peaks in the late 90s, early 2000s, and again in 2006 through 9 or so. But after that time, we saw a pretty substantial decline in estimated harvest. But I'll mention that after about 2015, 2016, we kind of saw a stabilization of the estimated spring harvest. And this is actually a very similar curve, but this is different. This is the number of turkey hunters that we estimate using those postseason surveys. Again, the same time period. This is from 1998 through 2025, and this is number of hunters. So you can see that there's been a pretty darn similar trend over that same time period in our spring turkey hunter numbers. We see that curve going down, and if you overlay them right on top of each other, we can see that the top graph here is the estimated spring harvest, the bottom graph is the estimated spring hunter numbers, and just look how uncanny those trend lines kind of follow each other. So if we used estimated spring harvest just to try to monitor the population and use that as an index of the turkey population in New York, would not be very accurate, because we know that hunter numbers have come down. So that is likely a driving factor. So what we know is that harvest is definitely tied to hunting effort for turkeys. And this is true of a lot of species. And this is why just your plain straight up estimated harvest for game species is usually not the perfect estimate, or not the perfect index of the population that we would hope it would be. And like I mentioned, if you look at our spring estimated harvest over the last few years, it's been relatively stable. There might have been a little bit of a dip here, but pretty darn stable compared to that real big drop that we saw from about 2010 through 2015 or so. So this one, let me just back up here. That graph was just showing the trend line from 2017 through 2025, so up until this spring. So pretty darn stable harvest and relatively stable hunter numbers. You can see that the trend line might still be angling down a little bit. So this is over that same time period, 2017 through 2025. This is hunter numbers for the spring season. Again, trending down slightly, but and that tracks with the estimated harvest a little bit too. Take per unit effort. So I mentioned that estimated harvest alone is probably not the best index to look at for your turkey population, and which is why we often look at spring turkey harvest per 100 hunter days, or take per unit effort. So this is just one of those metrics that we can look at to help keep a beat on the help keep track of the turkey population. So this is 2017 through 2025. This is take per 100 hunter days in the spring season. And I'll just caveat this because the last 2 years, 2024 and 2025, again, we get all this data that's used to make these figures and graphs from those postseason surveys, and those last 2 years, 2024 and 25, were used the email surveys data exclusively. So kind of a maybe the shift higher of the take per unit effort might have been from a relic of changing the survey type between years. So, but generally speaking, also relatively stable in New York. It seems like over the last 9 years or so, last decade, we've seen a pretty stable turkey population. And now, again, I'm just talking about the turkey population statewide. I haven't gotten into anything on local levels or anything like that, but statewide, I think if we, let's see, if we look at the dashboard here, we can get into localities and more regional effects a little bit. So let's see if this works for me. So you can go and see these. These are on our website. If you just Google Turkey Dashboard New York, Spring Turkey Dashboard New York, you can find the spring one. There's also a fall one, which I probably won't have time to show you today, but definitely check it out. If you just Google New York DEC Spring Turkey Dashboard or Spring Turkey Dashboard DEC, something like that, you will come up with this, where you can look at those trend lines that I was just showing. And I should be updating this after each season once we get that estimated harvest in. And you can look at harvest per square mile, so you can look at where we take the most birds per square mile of land. Estimated harvest, just generally speaking, how many birds are taken in each unit. And if you click on these units, let's go back to the take per unit effort. If you click on these units, let's see, right here, I'm in this aggregate. This is called a WMU aggregate. I'm in this one, and you can look at that trend line will update, so you can see how take per unit effort has changed, has trended through time since 2017. So check that out if you're interested in looking it up or want to share that with other folks. And then you can also look at our harvest timing on this one. You can see that we harvest on this graph. This is showing a proportion of birds taken by date in our spring season. Currently, our spring season is May 1 through 31. Every year, it's been that way for a really long time now, about 30 years or more. And we harvest most of our birds in the first 3 to 5 days of the season. You can see on May 1, we take about 14% of all the turkeys that we're going to take that year. So, yep, early season is definitely when we take most of our birds. Just something interesting to note. So yeah, check out that dashboard if you're interested in looking at that more, and where you can click on your specific WMU aggregate where you live or hunt. I'm going to stop sharing that. Hopefully I go right back to here. And yeah, so check that out. You can look at that data in more detail, and I should be updating that as years go on. And so yeah, next I wanted to talk about summer sighting survey and what we get from that, which is turkey productivity estimate, which the main one being poults per hen. So that's the number of poults you can expect to see per hen in August. So we run this summer wild turkey sighting survey where we collect all summer citing all sightings of turkeys during the month of August, not just hens and poults, toms too. But the really important metric we get from that is poults per hen. We had a really nice and high ratio in 2024, and I'll show you that in a minute, of the estimated poults per hen. And it's our proxy of how productive was the turkey population that year. Last year was favorable conditions in the spring. This year was not quite as great as many of you might remember. It rained every stinking weekend from February through I think till June, it seemed like. So a lot more rain in the southern half of the state, but the northern half of the state was actually pretty dry over the same time period this spring. So we still had a decent recruitment year this year for turkeys, it looks like. So, but the main thing I wanted to point out is, again, over through time, yeah, we have some variability between years. Most of what drives productivity variation between years is the weather. We all know that. A really cold, wet spring is not so great for nesting hens, and especially those young poults. If they're just hatching, they're probably going to get hammered by a really cold. They can't thermoregulate as well as the adults, so they're going to get hammered, and we will have a lower poults per hen estimate usually when that happens, when we have a cold, wet spring. So that's just through time since 2005, but again, generally pretty stable despite some variation in between years. That data, the summer productivity data, you can also look at that same trend line and your specific WMU aggregate that you're interested in. You can click on in the fall turkey harvest dashboard. I'm not going to get into that now because we're running behind, but yeah, feel free to check that one out too. Again, you can find them pretty easily on our website, especially if you just Google New York State turkey dashboards. You should be able to find them. So again, if you take those two data sources together, our harvest estimation, take per unit effort, and you take our productivity data, if you take those together, we have a pretty stable population of turkeys statewide, especially over the last decade or so. Now, again, regionally, things might be different, and especially on local scales, things might be different. Turkey flocks ebb and flow to a much larger degree on smaller spatial scales, but statewide, turkeys are pretty stable. I don't want to jinx us or anything like that, but I would say we have stopped that major decline from 2010 to 2015 or so in the population that got folks really worried about the population. But last thing I want to talk about, with that stable turkey population in mind that we think we have statewide, we have not changed, and I mentioned this earlier, we have not really changed the spring season structure in New York for over 30 years. I'm not saying it needs changed, but we just wanted to revisit the spring season structure in New York and to see if it was satisfying New York turkey hunters. And so what we did was we collaborated with Cornell, Center for Conservation Sciences, so CCSS, and we sent out a survey of spring turkey tag holders, so spring turkey hunters. Earlier this year, we used over 10,000 permit holders from 2024, so known turkey hunters. We split this survey up into 3 geographic strata, and I'll get into that in a minute. It was a mixed mode survey, so we had paper and we had some online, and overall we had a response rate for this survey of just over 20%, I think it was, and over 1,500 active turkey hunters replied to this, and non-respondent interviews, Cornell did these in June of 2025. They got 198 non-respondent interviews done, and 138 of those were active turkey hunters. So from those data, we were able to capture a few really interesting things, and I just wanted to touch on those now. So there's those 3 management zones, those that we split this survey up into, just in case, satisfaction and beliefs about the turkey population and drivers of satisfaction of spring turkey hunters are different between Western New York, Southeastern New York, and Northern New York. So for this, we're not looking at Long Island populations. They're their own beast, partly because that's a really new spring season. So we're kind of just letting that settle in, letting that go for a little while to see what happens with that. And it's been really great so far, that season down there. But how is when we asked the turkey hunters on this survey in New York, how has the turkey population changed in the last 5 years? What was their perception of that? Well, we saw that in the southeast and west, a large portion of those turkey hunters believed that the turkey population decreased. A good portion thought that it stayed the same as well, at least in their locality, but not many thought it increased. But interestingly, in the north, we saw that the turkey hunters up there thought that the population either increased or stayed the same predominantly. A good handful thought it decreased as well, but definitely a dichotomy between the southern zone of New York and the northern zone of New York. And it's interesting to note that the eBird data, so this is eBird Status and Trends tool. You can look this up. It's publicly available. This is a publication using data from 2012 through 2022, where they looked at eBird records and they determined whether a population was increasing, decreasing, or they were not sure whether it was increasing or decreasing, or probably staying the same. So this is, again, data from 2012 through 2022, and you'll notice New York here. You can see that in the southern tier and down in Region 3, closer to the island, closer to New Jersey, we saw some declining pockets of wild turkey, whereas the St. Lawrence Valley and up through the Champlain Valley, we actually saw increasing turkey populations, which really perfectly jives with what we saw from the perceptions of turkey hunters on that survey we sent out earlier this year. So just really cool, interesting stuff there. And you'll also notice from looking at this graphic that below New York, south of New York, everything's pretty much declining. And then everything north of New York is pretty much increasing in turkeys. So it seems like New York is really the inflection point of turkey populations. If you know anything about the turkey populations nationwide, the Southeast is in kind of rough shape right now, with most of those states down there, south of New York, even Pennsylvania and south. Those turkey populations are continuing to decline for not really known reasons overall, at least. When we asked turkey hunters what factors do they think what factors do they think are driving this population decline, that they said that most turkey hunters in the southern zone thought that turkey populations had declined in the last 5 years. Well, what was driving that? What do they think was driving that? And so if we look at what they perceived was moderate to a great effect on turkeys, predation was number one. Local weather conditions impacted them as well, habitat loss, and changes in farming practices. And it's probably a combination of all those things, right? So if a local turkey population is changing, probably a combination of those things. You might even throw disease into that mix as well, especially for small flocks. So you know how I mentioned that the turkey hunter numbers, so this is turkey hunter numbers again. This is the same graphic I showed earlier, but that turkey hunter numbers went down over the last 30 years or so. Well, when we asked how those same turkey hunters in that survey, how will hunting participation change over the next 5 years, many thought that there would be fewer hunter numbers due to low turkey numbers, especially in the southeast and west. And in the southeast and west, they also thought, a large portion of them thought that current hunter numbers would quit due to low turkey hunter numbers. So due to low turkey numbers. So we think that if things hold true, if the perceptions hold true, we may see more declines in turkey hunter numbers, which would be a real shame. And I hope that's not the case. And I hope that the turkey population is not declining, just like those same turkey hunters believed. So, and I don't believe that is the case at the moment. So when we asked satisfaction questions, this is the really interesting stuff. And we kind of expected this, at least some of us here, when we asked the questions, what is driving your spring turkey hunting satisfaction? So what makes you get up in the morning at 3:30 to get to your spot and beat the bushes and get out there? How often I hear gobbling was by and large across all zones management zones that we looked at, that was the main driver of satisfaction for turkey hunters. So you really want to hear gobbles. You may not have a chance at that bird, but if you hear gobbles, you had a pretty decent day. That's what it tells me. Now, again, it was definitely the highest rated, and this is a different way to look at this. This is when after the Cornell did some weighting on those numbers, but again, closer to 1 means so the lower the number is, the higher it ranked in terms of importance of a driver of satisfaction, and the higher, closer to 5 would be lowest. So amount of contact with other hunters, hunting pressure, in other words, doesn't really turn people off. Doesn't turn turkey hunters off to hunting, but hearing gobbling is paramount. So they really want to hear gobbles, and I can definitely relate to that. That makes a good day. But again, number of bearded turkeys available on the landscape for harvest, so that's your population pretty much, was still important. And opportunity to be in the field was also important. And these switched around a little bit based on whatever zone we were in, but generally speaking, it was pretty similar between the different management zones. And then my level of harvest success was also relatively important. But again, how much gobbling is happening on the landscape drives hunter satisfaction in New York, somewhat unsurprisingly. Where do we go from here? Well, we're starting this structured decision-making process where we're going to use some of that data from the turkey survey, from the spring hunter turkey survey, and we're going to evaluate the spring turkey season structure. We want to determine if modifications would better satisfy turkey hunters while still maintaining a sustainable turkey population. So that's important. We want to keep the turkey population sustainable and for future generations of spring turkey hunters, but we want to see if we can adjust it in any way, or maybe not, whatever we need to do to satisfy turkey hunters while maintaining that sustainable turkey population. Future research. I definitely want to get some future research going, and we're in the process of trying to get some projects going. We really need to obtain updated vital rates for wild turkeys in New York. It's been going on 15 years now for some of these data. So we need things like male harvest rate. So how many male birds are we removing? What percentage of the male bird population are we removing every spring? That's a really important vital rate that we need to get updated metrics on. We also really need to know what are their hen survival these days. How many hens are surviving through the spring? What's their nesting rate like? What's their nest success rate? What's their nest success look like in today's landscape with changing agricultural practices, changing predator communities, all that, changing hunting tactics, you name it. So we really need some updated vital rates, and I'm looking forward to getting some research going on wild turkeys again. And we'll continue to gather harvest and productivity data. So we're going to keep sending those postseason harvest surveys. 50,000 will be sent to valid emails, or we hope valid emails. 50,000 will be sent up via email post-fall and post-spring turkey seasons. And again, that summer sighting survey will still be going on. So if you get those surveys in your inbox or in your junk mail, hopefully not, please fill it out. Again, even if you didn't hunt, that's still important data. And if you did hunt and didn't shoot a bird, that is also still critical data to help us characterize what hunting effort looked like each spring and each fall. And if you see birds in the month of August, definitely fill that out. That one's pretty easy to find during the month of August. You just Google New York summer turkey sighting survey. And with that,